Hi everyone, Hussein here. Thanks for popping in. A couple of weeks ago, Epic Games launched Unreal Engine 5.4, and with that, we finally got the much awaited motion design feature. While I was looking for some tutorials to start learning it, I came across the amazing tutorial by Antonio Juan. Unfortunately for me, it was in Portuguese, I think. And I made this and I put up on my YouTube channel. Since then, it has had around 7,000 views, and I even got some requests for a tutorial. So I decided to make one, but before we jump into the full tutorial, all credits go to Antonio. I'll leave a link to his channel below. Please give him all the love and support. Let's go. This is the Epic Games launcher. I will now click on Unreal Engine 5.4.1. Click on the launch button. Okay, when we get the Unreal Project browser, I'm going to select Film, Video, and Live Events template. And then I'm going to click on blank. And for the starter content, we're not going to check it. I'm going to click on ray tracing though, because we're going to use Lumen for this. I'm going to call this Unreal Engine Bloom. Okay, and let's click on create. So what we're going to do is first, I'm going to enable the motion design plugin. So we'll go up to settings, plugins, and I'm going to look for something called motion design. I'm going to enable that and press yes. And now I'm going to restart Unreal Engine. All right, we're back. You can close this now. Before you proceed, I'm going to just go up to edit up here. I'm going to say project settings. I'm going to scroll down until I see rendering. I just want to make sure that we have Lumen enabled. So we got dynamic global illumination method is Lumen, reflection method is Lumen. We are going to enable hardware ray tracing when available. Change surface cache to heat lighting for reflection. That's the better ray lighting mode. I'm going to select detail tracing. That's okay. Scroll down a bit more. Virtual shadows map method is enabled. Support hardware ray tracing is enabled. For the distance field voxel density, I'm going to make it to 0.4. We don't need a lot of static lighting when we are doing Lumen. And that's it. Let's continue from here. It is always good to be organized. I'm going to click on my content folder over here. I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to say new folder, call this folder Bloom. I'm going to set color, and I'm going to just make this nice bright color. The next thing I like to do is also have this Bloom folder available in the favorites section over here, so I can find it quickly. Do a right click and say add to favorites. This is the same stuff that I've been showing you in my Work Faster in Unreal Engine video series, which I just recently created. So I've got my Bloom folder over there. So we're going to create a new level for this. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to say New Level, and I'm going to choose Empty Level. Click on Create. Okay, now we have a blank empty level. And let's quickly save this. File, Save Current Level As, and I'm going to put it in my Bloom folder. I'm just going to call this Bloom. Then we're going to go up to the selection mode. Since we enable the plugin, we should have now a mode called motion design. I'm going to click on that. So now we actually go into the motion design interface. We are going to close it. We don't need that for now. Again, I'm going to drag this panel motion design into on this side. So now we have a bigger space to do our stuff. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on create defaults. In this pop-up, I'm going to remove a couple of things. We do not need the directional light, nor do we need the skylight. Just going to use the default scene root and post-process volume and click on spawn. On the right hand side, you will see that you have a motion design window, and now we have outliner window as well. So I'm going to put the motion design on the left hand side because I'll be using it more compared to the outliner. So in our default scene, we have the two items, or the two actors, which is your camera and the post-process volume. I like to rename this. I'll just call this Cam1 for now. And I'm going to just call this PPV. I'm used to renaming it such. Right, so we have our camera and our post-process volume in our motion design panel. So we got a camera. I'm going to just eject from the camera for now. And I'm going to switch from my camera to the default viewport for now. This is our normal viewport we see in Unreal Engine. At the moment, everything is blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some lights. So I'm going to go to Window, Environment Light Mixer. So create skylight, create atmospheric light, create sky atmosphere, create volumetric light, and create high fog. Next thing, we're going to bring in a plane. That's going to be our floor, or in this case, our ground. Let's save first, just in case. So I'm going to click on Save All. Very important to save often. I'm going to go to Place Actors. I'm going to go to this 3D cube over here. I'm going to say, give me a plane. I'm going to drag and drop. right? And I will reset its position to 0, 0, 0 by clicking on this ellipsis and then click on reset to default. Now, if I press my F key, I'm going to go close to the plane over here. Disable the icons over here. We can just press the G key, G for game mode. I'm going to click on the plane, down to scale, click on this padlock over here. So all of them change at one go. And let's make it 20. Control Shift S to save. So we have a plane of the size of 20, 20, 20. The next thing, we're going to go to the motion design window here. I'm going to click on actors and I'm going to choose cloner actor. And then we'll just click once in the viewport. Then you have your cloner actor. We are going to select the actor, reset location to 0, 0, 0. Also the rotation. And now we have clone in our scene. All right, before we go any further, let's tidy up the motion design panel over here. So I'm going to go to motion design and I'm going to look for actors and I'm going to go and grab the null actor. Double click on the null actor and then we have null actor over here. We're going to rename this atmospherics. Select exponential height plot, volumetric cloud, sky, atmosphere, directional light and skylight, and drag and drop onto atmospheric. The next thing we're going to do is select your cloner and we're going to change the layout by changing the count X to 3, count Y to 3, and count Z to 1. So we have something like that. Okay, we'll bring down to the ground level, or in this case, the plane level. So we need to bring the flowers in. So we're going to go and grab them from Bridge. You can go to Window and you can go look for Quixel Bridge, or you can click on this plus sign and select Quixel Bridge. So select Bridge and look for 3D plants. And I'm looking for this specific one. It's called Sea Thrift plants. So just type in Sea Thrift, THRIFT. Here we go. This is the one that we're going to use, right? So I'm going to select that, go and grab the highest quality possible. And once it's downloaded, we can click on the plus sign to have it available in our content browser, which is here. To zoom out and zoom in out of the content browser, you can hold down the control key and use the scroll wheel. The next we're going to download is actually the surface or the texture for the ground. So let's jump back to Bridge. And for this one, I'm going to go and grab some surfaces. I'm going to click on surfaces. This will be probably a good one to use. So I'm going to click on ground. And then I'm going to choose desert western ground. And since we're not going to see much of this ground because it's been covered with leaves and whatnot, so we can just probably go for the high quality version. Click on download, click on the plus sign. And the last but not least, we are going to go and grab some leaves for the ground itself. So for that one, I'm looking for something called English Ivy. Select that. I'm going to go for the high quality version. Click on add to our content browser. So now we have the English Ivy, we have the Sea Thrift, and then we have the surface, which is the desert western ground. With all the assets available now in our content browser over here, we're going to jump into the 3D plants, go into the Sea Thrift folder. I'm going to select this one here, this one there, maybe this one, and this one. Click and drag onto the cloner. And now we have all of them in our scene. So since we are not going to be using the default cube, we can delete it. It's going to give you some warning, but that's fine. Just press yes. So now we have all the 4 flowers here with the cloner selected. Scroll down and we're going to change some parameters over here. For the count X, Y, and Z, we're going to change count X to 100. And then we're going to change the count Y to 100. We'll leave count Z alone. And for spacing, we're going to bring down to 2, 2, and 2. So now they're a lot closer to each other. You can see that it's very dense flowers. Let's bring down the flowers down to the ground a bit. And just bring it down slowly until we have it onto the ground. I'm going to go down to the render sections. We're going to change the mesh render mode to random. Now you can see the flowers are in a random mode. And we change the seed here to something like 37, for example. And then we go down further, we can see rotation minimum and rotation max. So click on rotation max and we just change it to maybe something like 270. You just play with these numbers if you want to. It doesn't have to be 270, it can be 180 in that kind of form. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to change, probably the spacing is too close. So I'm going to try 5 and 5. Yep, It looks much better. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a texture into this. Look for something called constraint and change it from none to texture. Okay, everything will disappear in the scene, but not to worry. Okay, I'm going to go to blue. I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this texture. Open up the texture folder. Click on the import button, and on my desktop I have an Unreal Engine logo which I'm going to pick up, and then click on open, and I'm just going to drag and drop into here. So now you will see that you have an Unreal Engine logo with the flower. And let's bring it down a bit to the ground. If for some reason you're able to drag and drop a logo into here, just make sure that all the flowers that you have here, they are in what we call a movable mode. All right, let's bring in the surface. So I'm going to jump back to my mag scans. I'm going to go to surfaces. Over there, just drag and drop onto the plane, and then we have something like that. Double click on the MI Desert here. Open up the material instance. Open up the global. Under tiling offset, let's open that up. Let's change it to 5 and 5. We're going to close that. So we have a better looking ground. So let's click on Save All just in case. And then I'm going to go and grab the English Ivy. I'm going to jump now to the foliage mode. And in foliage mode, I'm going to just delete this out. So I'm going to pick up this one over here. Maybe this one over here. I'm holding on my control key, by the way, when I'm selecting. Maybe this one over here. And perhaps this one over here. I'm going to click and drag into the foliage type area over here. And then make sure that everything has the blue check. Okay, select all of them. And then I'm going to scroll down a bit. I'm going to change the scale X to maybe, some of them will be at 0.2 and some of them will be at 1.2. So that's, it varies in sizes. Instead of painting, you can also do something called the fill. So I'm going to click on fill and see what happens. Not bad. We've got those nice plants. Okay. The idea is to have some plants and then we can see through the ground as well, which is kind of nice. Okay, I'm going to undo that and I want to try one more time. So instead of going for 1000, let's go for 1500. And let's try and using the fill here. That's better, right? You can actually bring the flowers up a bit. Go back to selection mode, select the cloner, and then we'll bring the flowers up a bit more. All right, so that you can see that now we have the flowers together with the leaves. Press Ctrl L to move the light around until you get something that you like. The light's coming from the left or something, and we'll tweak it as we go along. There we go. We have a logo there and our plants and our ground texture. Our flowers and our plants look a little dull. So what we're going to do is we're going to brighten up the color a bit. So we can grab them by going to the 3D plants. I'm going to go into Citrif, and I'm going to open up this material called Citrif. It's a code number there in 8K, and we are going to adjust some parameters here. I'm going to go into translucency, and I'm going to enable these two check marks over here, and let's try playing with these numbers over here. So I'm going to probably put that 4, and let's put 9. So they're getting a bit more brighter now. You can see here, a bit more vibrant. If you can play with more, let's try 5 and 5. Let's go to roughness, 0.2. 0.2 looks good. We have changed the roughness to 0.2, translucency to 10, and translucency desaturation to 10. And let's do the same thing for the leaves. Okay, so I'm going to close this and jump out to 3D plants, go to the English Ivy, click on MI English Ivy, and then we'll do the same thing here. So what we've done is we changed the color variation, the roughness, and then we change the translucent strength to 5 and 5. Right, so now we have a much vibrant flowers, and also the leaves are a bit nicer looking. Okay, we have adjusted the vibrancy of the leaves and the flowers. What we're going to do next is we're going to bring in an effector. The best way to bring in an effector is by selecting your cloner and go down to the details panel and click on spawn linked effector, and the effector will be linked to this cloner over here. So click that, and now we have an effector in our scene, and now you can see the effect of the effector in our scene. Okay, if I bring back the overlay icons, so if I click on here, go back to the game view, you'll see that there's an effector here. If I move it, you can see what's happening. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to select the effector now. We're going to change offset to 0, 0, and 0. Next thing we're going to change is the type. Instead of sphere, we're going to change to plane. And the easing in and out, or the easing property here, we're going to change. Well, this is something that you can experiment with. I'm going to choose inelastic for now. And then you can see this wireframes or the effector in our scene. We're going to rotate that around. So choose your rotate tool, rotate that way, because we're going to try and see whether we can make the effector work from screen right to screen left. I'll go back to the move mode, and we're going to bring it somewhere like that. We're going to change the plane spacing to about 70, and then change the rotation for the X. We're going to set to 10, Y to 10, Z is going to be 90. Move right in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the offset down, minus 50. Okay, that's what we want, yeah? So I've changed the offset to minus 50, and now if we scrub the effector, you can see the plants popping up. A bit of rotation there as well. And when we go into slow motion mode, you can see that actually the flowers are actually popping up. So we're going to do now, we're going to animate the effector. So I'm going to open up my sequencer, and I'm going to select the effector and drag it into the sequencer. Okay, let's make this a bit wider so we can see the plus sign over here. And we're going to look for transform. And we're going to drop a keyframe here. Let's push this right to the back so we don't see anything yet. And drop a keyframe by clicking on this keyframe icon over here. And then we're going to make this into let's make it into a 5-second composition. Let's set the frames per second to 30 frames per second. And 30 times 5 is going to be 150. So let's drag this outline here to 150. So let's bring the playhead to right to the end. So if we have this issue where the playhead is going out of bounds, what we can do is we can go and click on this gear icon, activate keep playhead in playback range while scrubbing. So this will not allow the playhead to go out of the range here. So I'm going to push it right to the end. Now drag with the X value until we are done with this animation. And then I'm going to drop keyframe there. So now we have an animation that's actually going to work right to left. Here we go. So before we're done with this part, let's organize our motion design panel here for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new null object. So we're going to go to motion design. We're going to go and grab actors. Again, the null actor, double click on it till it appears here. So I'm going to just rename this to, call it Effector. I'm going to drag the effector onto it, and then I'm going to drag cloner onto it. So we have all that into one folder over here. So a good reason why I created a special folder for the cloner and effector, because if I select my effector now, I can actually move this as one unit. Just in case if you want to move and you want to adjust the placement of the logo, you can actually move it as one unit. Let's jump to the next part. All right, next we're going to talk about creating the cameras. If you look back at the video that I made, there are about 3 cameras in this scene. Camera number 1, the flowers blooming. And then this is the second camera, which we can see the flowers in slow motion with the leaves in the background out of focus. And then we have a third camera, which is at the end of the whole animation being completed. So let's work on creating these cameras. Since we already have a camera in our scene, under the default scene here, you can see we have a camera 1. Let's unlock first, and then click and drag camera 1 into the sequence. Since we are locked onto the camera, move the camera close to where the logo is. All right, I find that this angle is good for the first scene. If I unlock my camera or eject my camera, you can see it's actually pointing down that way. So that's our first scene. Okay, I'm going to take the Alt marker here and press my right bracket key. And that's our animation. Looking at the reference again, you can see that there's really a slight movement of the camera from screen left to screen right. Let's animate this as well. So I'm going to take it to the end and I'm going to give it a bit of animation. So now if I can see, you can see that's actually a movement of the camera. The only thing I need to do now is I need to make the keyframes as a linear keyframes instead of having it the easy ease keyframe, or in this case it's called the cubic auto. Select both keyframes and I can do a right click. I can say linear, click my spacebar, you can see this simple animation going on. Now we're going to work on the second animation. Let's eject from cam 1. Let's find camera location, which is going to be good to see the second animation. In this case, is going to be close view of the bloom. I like this angle over here. So let's screw up and you can see that we have a nice bloom effect happening. So I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the viewport icon and I'm going to say create camera here. And we're going to create the cine camera actor. I rename the camera to cam2 and drag it, drop it into the default scene. Drag the camera 2 now into the scene, and I'm going to quickly go to frame 0 and I'm going to create a keyframe for that. Then we have that animation happening. For this camera, I'm going to change the focal length, maybe a bit closer. Focal length is about, let's try 20 for now. And then I want to change the manual focus distance to focus on the zooming on the flowers. Very nice. The default current aperture is 2.8. I'm going to bring down to 1.8 because we want some of the flowers to be out of focus and even the background to be out of focus. If I play with my focal length now, let's go for 24 mm. So that's our second scene where we have flowers blooming. If I play it now, the animation, perfect. So now we have scene number 1, which is that. Scene number 2, we have that going on, and then we will work on the third animation. For the third animation, we are going to have top-down view. So I've repositioned my view from the top-down view, and I'm going to create another camera over here. So I'm going to click on this viewport icon again. I'm going to say create camera here, and I'm going to use again cine camera actor, and it's going to pop up in our motion design panel. I'm going to rename that quickly cam3. And for the sake of organization, I'm going to drop it into default scene. And I'm going to drag and drop camera into this level sequence. And I'm going to click on save just in case. And now we have the view. I'm going to just maybe zoom in a bit closer. All right. And I'm going to drop a keyframe there. And I'm going to drag the keyframe to the beginning so the camera does not move. All right. If you look back at the reference, there's actually a slight movement of the camera. The last part is just zooming out a little. Let's make an animation. So I'm going to just bring the playhead to the beginning. I'm going to maybe use a transform here, location. This is going to be our Z location. Camera moving in and out. Drop another keyframe here. The transform. And we have that nice animation going on. So I'd like to reverse the animation over here. So what I can do is I can actually drag and just swap it around. Fastest way of swapping animation. The way I worked on this project is by rendering the scenes separately. So here is scene number 1. So what I did was, if you look at the reference again, I created some shadow catches because every scene has a different look. So I worked on individually and I combined them in Davinci Resolve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I created the shadow catches. So I'll go back to content browser. I'm going to go back to Bloom, the folder. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say material. I'm going to call this m_shadow catcher. I'm going to open that up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the mode from opaque to mask, change it to unlit. So it will not be affected by light. Create a texture node, T and left click. Hook it up to opacity mask. For the texture, I'm going to look for something called noise. T_noise01. Apply and save. And now if I were to eject from my camera here, create a new plane. Go down to place actors, go to 3D, drag the plane into the scene, enlarge it, 5 and 5 for now. Take the material and drag onto it. Something that I forgot to do is, let's go back to the material and select the node here. I'm going to convert this to a 2-sided. So let's jump back to the sequence, go back to cam 1. Right off the bat, it looks very nice. We have this nice shadows. Let me just rename this to shadow catcher. What you can do if you do not get the result like what I get, okay, you can play with the rotation. You can even play with the size of the plane. So I like this. Let's now set up for render. So we're going to go ahead and render scene number 1. To render scene number 1, I'm going to use the movie render queue. If you do not have movie render queue, you can go to the settings, go to plugins and make sure typing movie, and you should have movie render queue enabled. So in movie render queue, click on unsaved config here, and I'm going to keep it simple. Use JPEG sequence, that's fine. Default render, that's fine. Settings, we're going to click on anti-aliasing, make this to 1. So I'm going to go to temporal sample count and put it to 12. I'm going to override anti-aliasing. Click on settings again. I'm going to put in game override. So we have JPEG sequence, we have deferred rendering, we have anti-aliasing, 1 and 12. We override anti-aliasing, game overrides, and then I'm going to click on output, and I'm going to click on these 3 ellipses, send it to my desktop. I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call this Bloom renders, and inside there I'm going to create another folder called cam1, and I'm going to select that as a folder. Keep it to HD, click on accept, and let's save this because we're going to use this a couple of times. Click on unset config. Let's save as preset in the Bloom JPEG underscore AA1 game override. Click on save, and that's it. We'll click on accept, hit the render local button, and I'll be back once the render is finished. Okay, render is completed. So we've got this. We're going to put this aside for now. Let's look at camera number 2. For camera 2, I've made some changes with the Effector. So if I click on Effector here, what I've done is I've changed the plane spacing to 150, and I've changed the rotation to 180 on the Z. So we have a better looking blooming happening now. We're going to enable camera 2, and then we're going to zoom in a bit because we don't need 5 seconds of animation on here. So I'm going to just drag my playhead here until I see a bit of the flowers coming in. So I'm going to use my control key and zoom in, and I'm going to start somewhere around here. So I'm going to maybe start at frame 75, click on my left bracket key. That's the in point, and then I'm going to scrub until the whole screen is filled with the flowers. Tap on the right bracket key to the out point. This is where we're going to slow things down. Click on the plus sign, let's select time dilation track. That's a time dilation track. I'm going to make 4 keyframes. So click the first keyframe over here. Maybe using the shift key, I can move the timeline around. Scrub down a bit more until here you can see the flowers start to sprout. Click on again, and then maybe a few frames down. One more time, and for the 4th time will be somewhere around here. Okay, so all of them are now on the value of 1.0. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the first keyframe with 1.0, and then the next keyframe I'm going to bring it down to 0.01. The same thing with the next keyframe, 0.01, and then the last keyframe will be 1.0. Okay, so we've created 4 keyframes, and if we do a test play, you can see that it's slowing down. And if it doesn't happen for you, just check the keyframes again. Sometimes it doesn't work. I'm going to bring the 2 frames closer together so you can actually disable the snapping feature here. I'm going to drag it to the left. That's right. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do is also I want to make sure that we change the focus on the flowers here, and I'm going to play with the focus distance. So maybe at the beginning we want to focus on the leaves at the back there, so I'm going to just change my focus distance to focus on the leaves. Okay, drop a keyframe here, and then I'm going to go now when the flowers comes into the frame, focus on the flowers now. So let's drop a keyframe here to bracket that thing as well. And now we want to focus on the flowers somewhere around here. Maybe the foreground flowers first. And then somewhere around here, we change the focus to maybe the background flowers. And then we'll go back out here, maintain the focus to the foreground flowers again. And once we're done, we will just go back to focusing on everything. That looks nice. It's totally up to you how you want to set the focus. That's nice. And we're going to render this cam2 now. Okay, so let's set up for render. Click on the movie render queue. We're going to use the same configuration as earlier. Okay, click on the down pointing arrow. Click on the JPEG AA112 Go. This is the one that we made earlier. Just click on it. We have to change a few things though. JPEG sequence is fine. Alias is 112. Because there's a camera movement and there's a lot of motion blur, I'm going to change this to 5 and 5. Override anti-aliasing is fine. Game overrides. Output, click on the 3 ellipses. We already have a cam2 there, select that. So instead of using frame number, there's something called frame underscore number REL. REL stands for relative. So we have to have that instead. Please take note, sequence underscore name dot frame underscore number REL. You have to change that if you're using time dilation. Very important, okay? Click on accept. But before we hit the render local button, I'm going to just close that for a second. Make sure that we have our camera cut set to camera 2. The moment is set to camera 1. Select that, right click and say cam 2. And now we have that as the main camera. Let's click on save, jump back to movie render queue. We have everything set up. And now we're going to click on render local. So we're done with rendering camera number 2. Now let's configure and render camera number 3. All right, for camera 3, it's the top-down look. In this case, we are zoomed in into the timeline. We have to zoom it out, control and scroll wheel out. And let's reset this back to the beginning and the end of the comp. So instead of doing that, I want to have a bit of slanting going towards the upper left corner. So from here, we can change the rotation, and then we can change it to maybe -60. Animation's all done correctly. I like that. But we don't need a time dilation anymore, so you can actually click on to disable it here. Okay, we won't be needing that. Okay, with our camera setup has been done, what we're going to do is we're going to play a bit with the lighting and the shadow catcher. After a bit of tweaking, I've set up the camera to look like that. I've changed the directional light a bit and of course played with the shadow catcher. Save this, go to the movie render queue, and let's just double check our configuration. JPEG deferred rendering, anti-aliasing 1 to 12, game overrides and output. We're going to click on the 3 dots again. And this time around, we're going to set for camera 3, select the folder, HD is fine, accept. And just to make sure that we are on the right camera, right click, make sure we're on camera 3. Perfect. So let's click on the render. I'm going to click on render local and I'll see you right after render is done. With all the renders completed, let's jump into Davinci Resolve to complete this project. Here we are in Davinci Resolve. I'm using the Davinci Resolve Studio 19. You can also use a free version of Davinci Resolve if you want to, or either that you can also use Adobe After Effects or Premiere Pro. So I'm going to click on Untitled Project over here, and this is Davinci Resolve cut page. I'm going to jump to the edit page, and I'm going to import all 3 footage. So let's go to Media Pool. So I'm going to go back to Cam 1, select the first frame, Control A, drag and drop into the Media Pool. If for some reason you're not able to drag and drop the whole image sequence, you can go to the media page at the bottom, and on the top left corner, you can see these triple ellipses. Click on it and then enable frame display mode sequences. You'll now be able to import image sequences into Davinci Resolve. So let's jump back to the edit page. So I've brought in my first cam. I'm going to rename that quickly so you don't get confused. I'm going to call it cam 1. And then I'm going to bring in the second clip, which is camera 2. Select the first, Control A, drag and drop, rename cam 2. And last but not least, our camera 3. With all our sequences in the media pool, we can now drag and drop them into the timeline. Cam 1 and drag drop into the scene. Grab cam 2 and cam 3. So let's run through and play this quickly. So I'm going to hit on the spacebar to play the sequence. We're not going to use all the footage. We're just probably going to trim it out a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where we're going to start off with. Maybe somewhere like that. I'm going to trim that. And I'm going to wait for a few seconds, and until there, I'm going to delete that out. So that's trimmed down to only a few seconds. For the next one, we're going to locate where the flowers are coming in as a zoom. I'll just trim this part a bit. We see the flowers blooming, and that should be good enough. So I'm going to just take this whole thing out, and we have about 8 seconds, almost 8 seconds. Part number 1, part number 2, and the last bit. Since our video looks good, we are going to jump into the color correction bit. So at the bottom of the screen, you see a tab called the color page. Click on the color page. Here we are in the color page of Davinci Resolve. We are going to add a node here. So I'm going to press Alt S, and then we'll get another node here. So I'm going to enable my effects over here. So I can actually approach by either doing it individually, or I can actually put an adjustment layer on top of it. I'll do adjustment layer a little later. But let's go and do the color correction for each and every clip here. So the first one, Alt S to bring in another node, and I'm going to right click and say node label. I'm going to call this color correction, CC. Here on the bottom left, we have all the dials like your normal color correction that we have. What kind of approach you want to have for color correction is totally up to you. I'm probably happy with that. So I'm going to copy this color correction that I made from here by pressing Control C, and I'm going to jump into the next clip, and I'm going to press Alt S again to bring another node, right click, node label, CC. Now we'll press Control V to paste the same color correction from the other one. So the next one, I'm going to use the same thing. Jump to the clip. I'm going to press Control V. The next bit is I'm going to jump back to the edit page. In the effects, I'm going to go to effects and go and grab adjustment clip, drag and drop. And I'm going to drag it right to the end. Let's jump back to the color tab. Make sure that the top track has been selected. This is for your color correction. Again, Alt S to put in the color correction node. I'd like to label that color grading CG. I'm going to go to the temperature and maybe increase the temperature a bit. Okay, and then let's look at the next one. Nice. And because we have an adjustment layer on top of all the three clips, they are all being adjusted at the same time. I think this is good enough. We have added another adjustment layer on top of it. I've put in a vignette in there, and then I've put in dilation to give that nice bloom look. All right, I think we're done. Control S to save. Let's call this UE bloom underscore TUT tutorial. Let's save that. What we're going to do next is we're going to export this video out. To export the video out, we'll go to the deliver page at the bottom of the screen. I use the H264 master. Give it a name. Let's click on browse for location. Call this UE underscore bloom and then final. We'll choose MP4. Codec is H.265. We'll keep it as HD. In this case, we rendered as 30 frames per second. So let's leave it 30 frames per second. Let's change that to constant bitrate. Preset is medium, high quality. All right, and I'm going to click on add to render queue, and here it is, and I'm going to say render all. Just takes a few seconds to render and we are done. Let's jump back to our render and have a look at it. That's the UE bloom final completed. That is it. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I did making it. If you did, please click the like button as it helps the channel. If you're interested in more Unreal Engine content, you might as well subscribe to the channel. Have a good one and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.